Math 2, first semester final review, Unit 7. Alright, so we're getting right into some trigonometry here. So we have the statement, true or false, sine of f equals 12 over 13. True. Tangent of g equals 12 over 5. Well, tangent is opposite over adjacent. That is false. It's upside down. Okay, the cosine of f equals the sine of g. That is true. That's a biggie. The sine of f equals the cosine of f. That is false. They are actually reciprocals. Okay, so hg, right here, hg equals the sine of g, or 13 times the sine of g. So let's first do this. What's the sine of g? So we're looking for hg right here, right? So, and we want the sine of g. The sine of g would be 5 over 13. Okay, and that's not going to help us find g, so that's false. Okay, so 5 squared plus 13 squared equals 12 squared. That's a false too. We got those mixed up. So hf should equal the cosine of f. That's looking a little bit better. So hf would equal the cosine of 5 over 13. So let's write that out. So the cosine of f equals 5 over 13. Okay, and then what we would do is we would cross multiply and get 5 equals 13 times the cosine of f. And remember, hf is 5, so this is true. And finally, the cosine of g equals 12 over 13. So the cosine of g is adjacent over hypotenuse. That is also true. Okay. So moving on. Triangles ABC are similar to triangle UVT. Select the statement that is true. Alright, so they're similar means they're the same shape. So that means corresponding angles would have the same ratios. So we see that B is corresponding with V, so the sine of B should equal the sine of V. That's true. So the cosine of V equals 8 over 10. Well, we got to figure out, is that 10? Well, BA is 5 and UV is 8. AC is 3, and TU would end up being 6, and this would be 10. 3, 4, 5, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5. Sound familiar? So this is true. Let me double check that. The cosine of V equals adjacent over hypotenuse. That's true. Tangent of V is greater than the tangent of C. Well, let's see. Tangent of V is right here, the tangent of C, and that would be, let's see, the tangent of V would be opposite over adjacent, or 3/4, and the tangent of C would be opposite over adjacent, or 4/3. Well, 4/3 is greater than 3/4, so that is false. Alright, tangent of V equals the tangent of B. So the tangent of V is 6 over 8, or 3/4. The tangent of B is 3/4, so that is true. TU equals 10 times the sine of V. Well, let's do that. Let's see. So the sine of V, where can I do this? Move that up. Alright, so the sine of V, the sine of V equals 6, or TU over TV. So TU over, let's say 10, because that's what they have here. So that would mean that TU, we cross multiply, equals 10 times the sine of V, and that is true. And finally, the sine of B equals the cosine of C, and that is definitely true as well. All right, those are some tricky ones you got to think about. Take your time, look at those a couple of times. Find the length of x to the nearest tenth. All right, so this is some trig because I got an angle that is not 30, 60, or 45. So it looks like this is tangent. So the tangent of 40 equals x over 30. X is on top, so I cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 30 times tangent of 40 is 30 times the tangent of 40. That will go into my calculator, which means 30 times tangent of 40, and we get 25.17 or 25.2. All right, over here we want x, so it looks like we can go the sine of 53 equals x over 17. X on top, so we will cross multiply. 1 times x is x. 17 times the sine of 53. And into our calculator it goes. 17 times the sine of 53. Enter, we get 13.6. So let's take a look. Let's go back, and 40 is less than 50, so we're expecting x to be less than 30. It is not dramatically less because 40 is not dramatically less than 50. Over here, well, we're expecting x to be less than 17. 53 is not huge, so we're expecting it to be reasonable, and 13.6 is reasonable, so I'm going to accept those answers, especially if they were one of my multiple choices. Moving on. Number 42, find the missing values and round trig values to the nearest 10,000ths place, or 4 digits, and angle to the nearest whole number. So the sine of 39, so we just got to do some calculating here. So the sine of 39 is 6293, 0.6293. The cosine of 39 equals 0.7771. All right. The sine of 51 equals 0.77771. Does that sound familiar? These two guys are equal. How come? Well, cosine of 39, sine of 31, if you add those two together, you get 90. So these guys would be in the same triangle. Cosine of 39 equals the sine of 51. We've been talking about that for a while. What do you think the cosine of 51 is? Let's figure it out. Cosine of 51 equals 0.6293. 0.6293. Do you remember that one? Way over here. Sine of 39, cosine of 51. They're equal. Huh. I've been telling you that all unit. Alright, so what is the sine, or what angle measure has a ratio of 0.309? That sounds like some time for inverse trig. So the inverse sine equals 0.3907. Enter. 22.99 or 23 degrees. Okay, so the inverse cosine of 0.3907 equals 67 degrees. Okay, 23 plus 67 is 89. And notice those two guys are the same. So the sine of 23 is equal to the cosine of 67. Okay, now let's look at this. Sine of 9205, cosine of 9205. So if we find sine, we should know what the cosine is without doing the math. So let's go inverse sine of 0.9205, and we get 66.999. Or 67 degrees. So that must mean that the cosine of that is going to be what? 23 degrees. Very good, because 67 plus 23 is 90. All right, G. The sine of 47 equals 0.7314. Find the angle measure of B in degrees for cosine 0.734. We don't need to do any math here. We just know that 90 minus 47 is 43 degrees. All right, I told you that was really important to understand that the sine of one reference angle equals the cosine of the other reference angle. All right, number 43, find the value of x to the nearest whole number. Well, it looks like some inverse trig. This is cosine adjacent over hypotenuse. So x equals the inverse cosine of 8 divided by 11. So inverse cosine 8 divided by 11 equals 43.34, so we'll just call it 43 degrees. All right, here it looks like we've got the opposite and the adjacent. That sounds like the tangent of x equals 8 over 13. So x equals the inverse tangent of 8 divided by 13. So we'll go the inverse tangent, 8 divided by 13, enter, and we get 31.6, so we'll call it 32 degrees. All right, moving on to number 44. A kite is flying at an angle of elevation. So guys, remember your angle of elevation is looking up of 40 degrees. Ignoring the sag in the string, find the height of the kite to the nearest foot if 53 feet of string are out. So very important. A lot of you are having trouble setting these up. So this looks to me as the sine of 40 equals x over 53. X is on top, so we cross multiply. We get x equals 53 times the sine of 40. I plug that into my calculator, and I go, let's see, what am I going to go? 53 times sine of 40, and we get 34.06, and we're going to the nearest foot, so it's 34 feet. Moving on to 45. The height of a ramp is 5 meters. The ramp will start 10 meters from the door to the ground. How long must the ramp be to the nearest meter? So this is Pythagorean theorem, or x squared equals 10 squared plus 5 squared, which means x squared equals 100 plus 25. X squared equals 125. We take the square root of both sides. We get x equals the square root of 125. 125 is 5 times 5 times 5, because a 5 gets out, a 5 gets killed, and a 5 stays in. And we need that to the nearest meter, so we're going to take 5 root 5, hit enter, and then that button right there, we get 11.18 or 11.2. Oh, nearest meter, so actually we're going to call it 11.0. All right, special right triangles. All righty, so this is your 30-degree angle, your short leg. The hypotenuse is twice as big as the short leg, so x is 5, half of 10, 5 root 3. And your long leg, you multiply the short leg by square root 3. So we end up with 5 root 3 times root 3. Square root 3 times square root 3 is 3. 3 times 5 is 15. 45, 45, 90. Well, if this is 5, I know W is 5 because it's an isosceles right triangle. And if this is 5, I know V is 5 root 2. Okay, so look over here on C. We have an isosceles right triangle, so I know R equals S. And we have the long side, so to get to S, we simply take 16. We multiply it by square root 2 over 2, which means it's 8 root 2, which means R and S are both. S is equal to 8 root 2, R is equal to 8 root 2. Okay, we got a 30, 60, 90. So if the long leg is 9 root 3, then the short leg is just 9. and U is 18.